Ibrahim Traoré did what a century of colonialism had never seen before. He stopped the hands of those who had once considered Burkina Faso an endless gold mine. Without a word of warning. Without a single soft negotiation, the young captain announced the cancellation of the licenses of 4 mining companies linked to the Franco-Canadian power network. In that moment, Paris was shaken, corporations were shaken, and the people of Burkina Faso raised their heads and exclaimed for the first time, "This gold is ours." But why did a seemingly technical decision cause the West to lose sleep? Because this was not simply a matter of a gold mine, but a second declaration of independence. The question is, who gave outsiders the right to decide the fate of a people? If you believe this is the moment when a new Africa was born, please like, comment and subscribe to join this story. Last September, the Burkina Faso Ministry of Mines abruptly announced the cancellation of 119 exploration licenses, including 4 major gold mines owned by Endeavour mining subsidiaries, Rox Gold, Wega, Etruscan, and Samafo. These companies controlled up to 90% of the profits, while the state received only 10%, even though the resources were located on its own land. The decision immediately sent shockwaves through financial markets from Paris to Toronto. There is no longer a question of Burkina Faso selling off its resources, a government official said. The motherland belongs to its children. With that announcement, Ibrahim Traoré went beyond a mere administrative move. He challenged the entire economic order established by the West since independence. And thus began an epic story, one in which gold became a symbol of sovereignty, and Burkina Faso stood at a crossroads. The day Ibrahim Traoré signed the decree cancelling the mining license, an invisible explosion reverberated not only in Ouagadougou, but also through the halls of Paris, London, and Ottawa. But to understand why this act had the power of a political bomb, we must go back to the roots of history, where gold, the glittering metal, was both the light and the shackles of an entire people. Burkina Faso, once known as Upper Volta, was part of the vast French colonial network in West Africa. Gold had been flowing from its soil since the 19th century, but not for the indigenous people. It was shipped to the port, across the Atlantic, in exchange for guns, alcohol, and the tools of government. The people only watched the ore convoys leave, leaving behind deep pits, dry streams, and calloused hands. After independence in 1960, it was believed that the shackles had broken. But the shackles only changed form, from the colonial whip to the signature of a commercial contract. Foreign companies came in, bringing with them investments, promises of development, but also unfair terms written in a legal language that ordinary people could never understand. In the 1990s and 2000s, Burkina Faso opened up completely to mining investment. France, Canada, Britain, and later the United States poured in capital. But in reality, that capital came with a catch. A typical example, the Hound and Yaramoko gold mines, where foreign companies owned 90% of the shares, while the state retained only 10%. That means, if more than 500,000 ounces of gold were produced in a year, Burkina Faso would receive only a small portion, the rest going to accounts in Toronto or Paris. People began to understand that the gold on their land was not for them. When a child sits in a thatched hut without electricity, when a mother carries water from a well several kilometers away, while containers of gold quietly leave the country, it is an insult. It is no longer about economics, but the continuation of colonialism in a new form, colonialism for resources. In the memory of the people of Burkina Faso, there is one name that is always mentioned, Thomas Sankara. He once said, "We must produce what we consume, and consume what we produce." Sankara fought against all forms of oppression, calling on the people to stand up straight, to be self-reliant. But Sankara was assassinated in 1987, leaving a leadership vacuum that has not been filled for decades. When Ibrahim Traoré, a young captain, with a determined gaze and tough words, stood up, many people felt something returned. He was not just a politician, he was seen as Sankara's spiritual successor, continuing the interrupted revolution. And the decision to revoke the gold mining license was a signal that Burkina Faso would no longer be a backyard for others to plunder. In the villages surrounding the mines, people saw forests cut down, rivers blackened by chemicals, and hills disappearing in just a few years. What did they get? A few temporary roads, some meager compensation, and sometimes repression when they protested. Many young people had to leave their villages to mine gold by hand, risking their lives in dark tunnels for a few pennies. That anger accumulated. It turned into protests, social movements, and the voices of young people. On social media, thousands of people called out, "Burkina Faso's gold must belong to Burkina Faso." When Traoré made his decision, crowds took to the streets. Not to protest, but to cheer. National flags fluttered, Sankara's songs rang out. The whole country seemed to wake up from a long sleep. The West always used a familiar argument: we bring capital, technology, expertise. But in reality, what they took away was dozens of times more than what they left behind. Financial reports hid huge profits, cheap labor contracts, and sophisticated tax evasion. Behind the slogans of sustainable development lies a harsh reality: Burkina Faso is just a land to be exploited, not developed. People are treated as cheap labor, and the country is allowed to sit back and watch its assets being taken away. If you believe that Traoré's courage is not just the act of an individual, but the echo of an entire oppressed Africa, share your thoughts in the comments. Don't let this voice be silenced, because silence is complicity in injustice. Imagine a poor country, besieged by a security crisis, heavily indebted, daring to bang on the table and declare, "We take back our gold." It was not just courage, but a direct challenge to the global system of power. Traoré knew the price to pay, from international lawsuits, economic pressure, to assassination attempts, but he still chose the hardest path. Because he understood, if he did not reclaim the gold today, tomorrow Burkina Faso would have nothing to pass on to the next generation. Gold is more than just a metal. Gold is a symbol of sovereignty, the blood of the motherland, the pride of an entire nation. How could a young captain, not yet 40 years old, challenge a financial empire built over centuries? This question echoed in the corridors of power in Paris, at the IMF headquarters in Washington, and even at the headquarters of mining corporations in Toronto. They did not believe that Burkina Faso, a poor, small country, caught in the desert and in a security crisis, would dare to fight back. But Traoré did, and he was not afraid. With one decision, he transformed himself from a national leader into a global challenger. And from there, a covert confrontation began, with blows that were not only non-gunned but equally dangerous. Just days after the license was revoked, the phones from Western embassies rang continuously. The initial advice sounded like diplomatic anxiety. But in reality it was a warning: reconsider, Mr. Traoré. Burkina Faso will pay the price. The IMF sent a vague message: its support loans could be reconsidered. The World Bank mentioned investment climate risks. Credit rating agencies threatened to downgrade Burkina Faso to junk status. The international press ran headlines: a poor country shoots itself in the foot. All worked together like a chorus. But faced with this threatening music, Traoré was not overwhelmed. He understood that these were not random words, but a battle of information, finance, and diplomacy designed to force him to back down. In the presidential palace in Ouagadougou, emergency meetings were held. Ministers warned, "Sir, if we continue, aid will be cut, investment will be withdrawn, and the economy could collapse." But Traoré quietly replied, "What economy? The current economy is already shackled. If we collapse because of the cut in aid, at least we collapse on our feet, not on our knees." The answer spread like wildfire among the young people. It proved that he did not speak in the language of cold diplomacy, but in the language of national pride. The major French newspaper called Traoré a new dictator. An American business magazine warned that Burkina Faso would return to the Stone Age if it refused foreign investment. TV commentators spoke of dangerous populism in Africa. This is how the West builds its image, turning a righteous act into a crime, a popular leader into an arrogant one. But the more Traoré is smeared, the more iconic he becomes in the eyes of the people. The Burkina people saw in those insults a truth: the West is frightened by the first rejection. Amidst the storm, one example is echoed in private conversations: Rwanda's Paul Kagame. A man once called stubborn by the world, but whose stubbornness has transformed Rwanda from ashes into Africa's fastest-growing country. Traoré makes no secret of his lessons from Kagame. He understands that major reforms take time, and iron will. As Kagame once said, "We cannot live on pity. We must stand up for ourselves." Burkina Faso is now walking that path, harsh but necessary. Not only the West, but other powers are also starting to take notice. Russia is sending subtle signals about alternative exploitation cooperation. China is offering infrastructure investment in exchange for access to resources. Turkey, Iran, even some Arab countries are starting to make overtures. Burkina Faso has gone from a country that no one cares about to a chessboard. Gold, geostrategic location, and the indomitable spirit of young leaders make this place a hot spot. But Traoré knows that he cannot let himself fall into a new cycle of dependence. He repeatedly emphasized, "We will cooperate. But we will not bow down. We need friends, not bosses." If you believe that Traoré's affirmation, "We need friends, not bosses," is a compass for Africa, leave your thoughts in the comments section. Every voice will be a brick, building a wall to protect the truth from the waves of smears from the international media. Companies whose licenses have been revoked are not sitting still. They have hired leading arbitration law firms in London and Paris, preparing to sue Burkina Faso in international courts. They want billions of dollars in compensation, turning the poor country into a legal hostage. On social networks, anonymous accounts spread fake news, accuse the government of corruption, and sow doubt among the people. Domestic interest groups, nurtured by previous gold contracts, began to secretly resist. Traoré was caught between international threats on the outside and internal resistance on the inside. But he still appeared in public, his voice firm, "We will not sell our souls to others. Gold is the blood of our motherland. Whoever wants to take it must go through the people of Burkina Faso." One evening, rumors spread that an international legal team had arrived in Ouagadougou, preparing to apply direct pressure. People flocked to the square, holding banners in support of Traoré. They did not know who the lawyer was, but they knew one thing: whoever wanted to take back the gold mine was an enemy of the people. In the flickering light of thousands of torches, Traoré's image was projected on a large screen. He did not promise money, he did not paint a picture of paradise. He said only one sentence: "We are poor. But we have dignity. And this dignity is not for sale." The crowd erupted in cheers. That was when the West realized, the battle they were about to face was not just with an individual, but with an awakened nation. Immediately after Traoré signed the decision to cancel the mining license, the doors of the conferences in Washington, Paris and Ottawa slammed shut. Western news reports opened with the same tone: a dangerous act, threatening the investment environment, breaking the international rules of the game. It was not by chance. From the IMF, the World Bank, to the gold corporations, all seemed to have been coordinated, launching a series of attacks. They not only wanted to protect their profits, but also wanted to send a warning message to the whole of Africa: whoever dares to follow Burkina Faso will be crushed. Letters threatening lawsuits were sent to Ouagadougou. International law firms have come up with terrifying figures: Burkina Faso could face billions in damages if it fails to comply with the contract. Western media paints a picture of a country, out of control, of an inexperienced leader who is leading the country into the abyss. But the danger does not only come from the outside. Inside Burkina Faso, those who once benefited from the old system are beginning to raise their heads. Former ministers, officials with ties to the West, and even some local businessmen who are used to sharing commissions, now see Traoré as an existential threat. They quietly contact embassies, provide information, and even incite public opinion. Traoré is dragging the country into economic crisis. We need a more moderate leader. In cafes in Ouaga, in closed-door meetings, the shadows of conspiracies begin to thicken. Some do not hesitate to discuss the possibility of a coup. From Paris and London, major newspapers launched analyses with the same script: Traoré is a threat to stability, Burkina Faso's mining industry collapses, investors flee. Images of poverty, unemployment, and famine were exploited to the fullest to create a sense of fear. War is no longer fought with bombs and bullets, but with words. Each article, each news report, is a bullet fired straight at the people's trust. Because they understand, if trust is destroyed, there will be no need for a coup. The people themselves will turn their backs on their leaders. But Traoré did not back down. Instead, he chose to confront. In a speech to the nation, he said loudly, "We will no longer be slaves in our own land. The gold of Burkina Faso must feed the children of Burkina Faso, not the banks of Europe. If they want to sue, let them sue. History will judge." The word spread like wildfire on social media. Millions of young people used the hashtag #GoldForBurkina to show their support. Some artists wrote songs, some painted posters, all turned into a cultural movement against neocolonialism. If you believe that Burkina Faso is writing a new chapter for the whole of Africa, leave your thoughts. Sharing your views is not just an individual act, but part of a larger fight, a fight to regain the voice of forgotten peoples. In the darkness, the rumors are growing thicker. Some spoke of a group of disgruntled officers. Others claimed that the West was cultivating an alternative scenario. Traoré understood, any mistake could become a pretext for a coup. He received security reports every night. Strange vehicles appeared around the capital, illicit money poured into the pockets of certain political figures. Burkina Faso became a chessboard. Each piece controlled by invisible hands. But unlike previous periods, this time the people were on the side of the leaders. They took to the streets to defend government buildings. They volunteered to guard gold mines. Old men recounted the story of Sankara to the younger generation, reminding them, if we lose Traoré, we lose everything. In the eyes of the people, this was not just a financial dispute, but a life-and-death battle between freedom and slavery. And they understood, the power of the West was much greater, but the power of a determined people was indomitable. In the sky above Ouagadougou, the first rains of the season fell, washing away the dust from the streets, but not the lingering anxiety. The people knew, after the threats would come action. It could be a financial blockade, support for the rebels, or even an assassination attempt. All possibilities were real. This battle was no longer a metaphor, but was happening every day. Every hour. Ouagadougou was immersed in a sultry night. The first rains of the season had stopped, leaving the atmosphere heavy as if the whole city were holding its breath. People whispered, something big is going to happen. But no one expected it to come sooner than they thought. Traoré, in his simple office, was still poring over reports on the gold mines. He knew that each number in it was the lifeblood of the country. But at the same time, another vein, trust, was being drained by the hand of betrayal. The bad news came: a group of high-ranking officers, who had sworn allegiance, had secretly contacted the embassy of a Western power. In return for suitcases of money and promises of patronage, they agreed to pave the way for a coup. The shock was not that there were traitors, but that these were the faces Traoré had trusted, who had shared bread with him during his days fighting in the desert against terrorism. A stab in the dark is always more painful than a bullet from the enemy, because it comes from behind. From someone we call comrade. One weekend night, while Traoré's motorcade was leaving the presidential palace, an explosion rang out just a few hundred meters away. Black smoke billowed. The car windows shook. The bodyguards immediately surrounded him, taking him out of danger. News of the failed assassination attempt spread throughout the capital. People rushed into the streets, both angry and scared. It was clear that the battle had entered a new phase. The enemy was no longer patient, but had openly drawn knives. Not stopping there, some northern cities erupted in strange protests. Organized too professionally. Printed leaflets in color, loudspeakers, even logistical vehicles, all proved to be sponsored by foreign hands. Some people were confused and asked each other, are we being fooled? Does the gold really belong to us? Or is it just a pipe dream? It was that moment of confusion that was the most dangerous. Because a coup d'état of guns may fail, but a coup d'état of faith is what really kills a nation. If you are reading this, ask yourself, which side will we stand on when betrayal arises? Please share your thoughts, because every word, every opinion, can become a small brick to build a wall to protect the truth. Don't let history be rewritten by traitors. Before the storm, Traoré did not run away. He appeared on national television, his eyes shining, his voice firm. There are those who want to sell this country again. But I swear, even if I am alone, I will not let Burkina Faso return to its chains. The image sparked an explosion of confidence. People flocked to the squares, carrying flags, torches and old Sankara songs. In the flickering light, they chanted, Traoré is not alone. Burkina Faso will not yield. The smoke has cleared, but its echoes remain. Burkina Faso today is not just in the midst of a political crisis, but in the midst of a life-and-death battle for sovereignty and dignity. Traoré declared, we would rather die free than live in slavery. That word became a fire, spreading to every roof, every alley, every drumbeat of Africa. This is no longer a story of Burkina Faso alone. This is a bell for the entire continent. Who will decide the fate of Africa, the greedy foreign powers? Or the young generation who dare to stand up to defend their motherland? In this historic moment, silence is complicity. Every voice, every heart, every action can fuel a liberation movement unprecedented since Sankara. If the spirit of Ibrahim Traoré touches you, please like, comment and subscribe. Don't just be a spectator of history, become a companion. Now, that fire has been handed to us. And only we can decide, will it die in the darkness, or burn brightly, illuminating the future of Africa?